Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we have a special guest with us. He has two books out right now. The first one is called The Thing in the Woods, as well as The Atlanta Excursion. I have with us author Matthew Quinn. Matthew, welcome to the Horror Room.
Well, welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure having you on. So first, let's talk a little bit about The Thing in the Woods. Tell my audience a little bit about this book.
Okay, so it's basically kind of Cthulhu meets the Great Recession. It takes place, I have to double check the timeline, I think in May of 2010. So our hero and his family move from Buckhead-ish to the small town of Eddington, Georgia, which if you look at the map is about where Sonoya is.
Mm-hmm.
And then because the dad wants a bigger house to go with his new job. Only then the housing bubble pops, the economy tanks, end up underwater with their mortgage and stranded in the small town. And so then our hero, James Daly, gets challenged to an ATV race by some of the local kids who keep calling him a carpetbagger. Which, from his point of view, is like, carpetbagger? Really? Only then one of the kids gets eaten by a tentacle monster in the woods, which it turns out has been worshipped by basically the Wish.com KKK for the last 100-some years. And James has seen too much, and the hunt is on.
Hey, Matthew, it sounds like a lot is going on in this book, man. It sounds like an interesting book. Now, okay, so what gave you inspiration? What made you come up with this idea?
Okay, you ever play the game Call of Cthulhu?
No.
Okay, well, this is probably around 2006 or so. I'm back home from college. I'm visiting Borders, and I'm reading through the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game manual. Never really played RPGs. So I like the lore. Mm-hmm. And what happens when the small towns with dark secrets where they worship the powers from beyond with blood become suburbs? In this case, Eddington becomes a bedroom community to Atlanta, and Phil, the owner of the local barbecue shop and the high priest of the cult, doesn't like it.
Because it seems like, so I'm from a small town, and it seems like every small town has its deep, dark secrets that, as someone new coming in, you never really get to know them, those secrets, unless you've been there for a while.
Yeah.
Now, how long did it take you? So you went from, coming up with a concept of this. How long did it take you to get the pen on paper and get this book?
Okay, I started writing a little bit of it in 2007, I think. Then I set it aside to work on my other series, the steampunk war series Battle for the Wastelands, which we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And then I finished Battle for the Wastelands first. Then I went back and really went ham on The Thing in the Woods. I think I finished it in about a year. Maybe a little more. I'm not really sure.
Now, is it hard to put a project down and jump to another one?
I'm not really sure. I mean, I need to be more disciplined in my writing, because instead of writing whatever the mood takes me, I just sit down and button chair, hands on keyboard. Mm-hmm. And once I get going, then I really get going. So it's just a matter of making yourself do it.
Because I can imagine just taking time off from like something like, we talk about video games. Like, I've definitely been like into a story mode of a video game and taken a couple months off, and I try to start it back up, and I'm like, wait a minute, where the fuck did this story go? Where am I? What happened? And it kind of knocks me out of the mood. Is that something that happens a little bit when it comes to writing? When you take that time off, does it take you time to get back into that story?
With Thing in the Woods, I'm not really sure, because the original idea I had for the creature was sort of like a little dwarf Cthulhu that with wings. The creature in The Thing in the Woods, if you look at the book cover,
mm-hmm.
ends up being something completely different. So the very earliest, couple thousand words of Thing in the Woods ended up, I don't know how much I rewrote, if any, because I finished it probably in 2014. I sold it to a small press called Digital Fiction Publishing about 2016, 2017. And then it was out through them for about 3 years until the press shut down. I got the rights back and republished it myself. So it's been probably 10 years since I actually wrote the darn thing.
Wow. Yeah, because I'm listen. Even like for me, if I take a couple days off from, if I take a couple of days off from doing an interview, it takes me a while to get back into that routine and get the emotions rolling. So, I mean, I find it incredible whenever I hear authors who is not only doing writing two books at one time or takes times off from one book. I'm like, that definitely takes a little discipline, and that also takes a creative side. Okay, so so let's just shoot over to your second book. We also have the Atlanta Excursion. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so spoilers for Thing in the Woods. James survives the experience, and he and the small town girl he doesn't liking, reference the back copy, are dating. And James is a student at Georgia State University. And thing is, at the end of Thing in the Woods, he gets a face full of monster blood on an open wound. Dun dun
Ooh.
dun.
Ooh.
And he starts hallucinating. When it turns out what he's seeing is real. So it turns out there's an alien invasion of Georgia State University. Like the prologue, we have Javion Jackson, who's meant to be kind of a foil to James, getting, he and some of his buddies are going to jump these other guys, and when the Greys show up and start killing all of them.
Nice.
Yeah.
So when you were writing the Thing in the Woods, was it a plan of yours to have a sequel or make this into a series?
Probably not at the beginning, but once I got to the end, I wanted to make sure I had what the almighty TV tropes calls sequel hooks.
Yes.
Like the open wound on James's face that got the blood in it. My uncle, who's read a lot of my books, says, he knew then that was going to lead to something. Or the real kind of, like the last paragraph is of Thing in the Woods is James going off on his date with Amber, my first real date, not just let's meet up and covertly talk about the small town of the dark secret. And he's wondering what else is out there, because, a year before, he'd never believed any of this.
Because as a reader, like, when I'm reading a good piece of work and it starts ending, I'm like, oh my goodness, I want to continue following these characters. I hope there's a sequel, because you want to continue following the characters. Now, when it comes to writing, were there ever writers that you got inspiration from, or that you kind of like modeled some of your work from?
Let me think about that. I do like S.M. Sterling.
Okay.
I'm actually the administrator of his Facebook group, the S.M. Sterling Appreciation Society. You probably compare Battle for the Wastelands to the Peshawar Lancers. There's L.E. Modisett Jr. Battle for the Wastelands is a lot like that. Thing in the Woods is more like Stranger Things, or a sort of lighter and softer version of It.
Yes.
Like no animal abuse or middle schooler sewer shenanigans.
Yes.
Like that's how I sell it at conventions, is like, hey, you like Stranger Things? That gets people's attention. But Battle for the Wastelands is inspired by my dad let me read his Gunslinger books. He had like the first 3 or 4 books of the Stephen King's Gunslinger. So let's see: Stephen King, L.E. Modisett Jr., S.M. Sterling, Hiero's Journey. That was a book written by Sterling Lanier in the 70s. A lot of that went into Battle for the Wastelands as well, because the Wastelands books I've been working on since I was in high school when I read The Gunslinger. The Thing in the Woods was late college and early in my career in journalism. Like Eddington is based a lot on the city of Griffin in Georgia, where I was a newspaper reporter, and the city of McDonough, where I was living at the time, because McDonough, the rent was cheaper. It was closer to Atlanta.
So were you always a horror fan?
Oh, yeah.
What was the first horror movie that you saw that really scared the shit out of you?
Well, have you ever see Godzilla 1984 or 1985?
Yes.
The scene where the big bug jumps out of the locker. I was probably about 5 or 6. I
and that
remember
was it.
wanting to see Arachnophobia and Gremlins 2, which Mom and Dad wouldn't let me, and that was probably for the best. Because I
Hmm.
saw Gremlins 2 during COVID, one of those indie theaters open, but we only seat half capacity.
Hmm.
And I realized 5-year-old Matt would either have been scared to death of the Gremlins or bored with all these adult jokes like Donald Trump jokes and Ted Turner jokes and Japanese tourists who can't stop taking pictures jokes. I
Uh-huh.
think we would not have gotten any of that. My parents would have
I
probably
know I
gotten
didn't.
money.
I know I didn't as a kid.
Yeah, and I never got around to seeing Arachnophobia, although I am on a movie podcast called Myopia Movies. We watch childhood movies, see if they're still good. At some point, we will watch Arachnophobia.
So, what's one childhood movie that you've watched that you were like, boy, I don't know why that was so good?
Huh. When I was in high school, I did see Dog Soldiers, the British werewolf movie,
Yes.
and I watched it again, and I'm like, this is kind of disappointing. Like a third of the movie looks like it's shot in a different film stock.
Hmm.
Like it's real grainy looking, like it's from the 70s.
Hmm.
And it's a lot slower at the beginning. Like I'm wondering if maybe I might have seen a TV. The second time I might have seen a TV edit because it might have been tightened up. But the first time was on DVD. I rented it and then decided I wanted to buy it. And Blockbuster's like, sure. You can tell how
I
long
actually
ago
own.
that was.
I would say I actually own a copy of that too. I think I got it from Blockbuster too when they were closing and they were selling their DVDs. And I got it for like $2.
Dog
But yeah,
Soldiers.
definitely. Yeah, Dog Soldiers. I have a copy of that in my collection.
It has a great soundtrack though, and I actually used it in a film class I was taking as an example of I think montage, like they're running through the woods and the werewolf is chasing them. And that guy runs and impales himself on a tree.
Hmm.
Like the song they're playing in that is called Silhouettes in the soundtrack, and it's really good. And there was a student of the female persuasion who I kind of liked, but didn't have the courage to ever ask out. And she apparently went and got Dog Soldiers herself. So yeah, I got a pretty girl to buy a monster movie. Yay me!
Yay! I've always wondered. Like I've had a musician on recently who's big into horror, and I'll always ask like, there was a time where music, like movies, had great soundtracks, whether it be horror, action, whatever. They had great soundtracks, and that's something that's missing now in modern movies. There are no soundtracks.
And I'm trying to think of the most recent horror movie I've seen. I think it's called The Tank. It takes place in the 70s. This young couple inherits a house in the Pacific Northwest, and it turns out there's something living in the water tank.
Ooh, I'm writing this down.
And I don't remember the soundtrack much at all. It's not if there had to be like a scary soundtrack,
Hmm.
but it's whatever it wasn't very memorable.
Yeah.
I do remember the Twilight Zone episodes. Sometimes total silence can be terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like these are,
But
you
just
ever see the episode about the mannequins?
mannequins. Probably.
And it's this woman gets lost in a mall after hours and is kind of wandering around, and there's scenes like a scene that is shot total silence, and it's actually really scary.
I watched a movie recently and it had no sound and it was fucking freaky. Like it was just the visual images, and I'm like, I agree with you. Silence sometimes can be scarier than anything. Just that nothing is. But at the same time, I mean, you look at a movie like 1978 Halloween, and that score definitely made the movie more terrifying for me.
Mm-hmm. Will it shock you to know that I've never actually seen any of the Halloween movies except for the one with Busta Rhymes?
Oh, and that's the worst one of them all.
Well, he fights Michael Myers with a chainsaw. That was nice.
The worst one of them all, man. That's the worst one of them all. Is that the worst one?
That was one of the first R movies I was allowed to see
Yeah.
in theaters by myself. So I was in high school. I probably had no taste.
But yeah, that's because I saw the first one I saw was Curse on Michael Myers, which was part 6. So the one you're talking about is part 8. So I saw part 6, I saw HTO, and I saw part 8 in the theaters. And part 8 is definitely my least favorite of all of them. All right, Matthew, this is a horror channel, so I'm going to ask you three random horror questions. You ready?
Mm-hmm. Got it.
All right, the first one. What is one iconic horror film that people rant and rave about that's the greatest thing ever that you don't understand why?
Hmm. Well, the first Friday the 13th movie, not a lot happens. Like in my Substack newsletter, I have a how would have done Friday the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
And the concept is interesting, but it should have been tightened up more. And they should have foreshadowed Jason's mother even existed. Like, when Crazy Ralph or whoever, I think it's Amos, is driving the counselor to camp, he could say, "Oh, that's the old Voorhees house. They said she went crazy and set the camp on fire and spent 20 years in prison. And then she just went, when they let her out, she went back to the house, never came out again." And kind of foreshadowing we'd actually meet Mrs. Voorhees at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, she was randomly murdered, and then this little old grandma shows up.
Yep. I agree. That is the same one for me. Like the original Friday the 13th. I never, ever, ever understood why people love that movie. I don't even understand how it became a franchise off of that movie.
I think it was just cost so little to make, and slashers were new, so it just made a lot of money on a very little budget, and that's how you get a sequel.
Yeah, and I'm glad they are, because I mean, we never got introduced to Jason, but Friday the 13th, the original one, is my least favorite Friday the 13th. And there's some bad stinker ones in that series too. I never understood the hype behind the original Friday the 13th. I can't sit through it. I could never sit through that movie. It drags. It really does. It drags, and the payoff is not something that you're like, wow, I didn't see that, or something. It was just like, huh? Okay, that's random. But yeah, I listen, we're on the same page when it comes to original Friday the 13th. That's definitely mine. All right, second question. Is there a horror director that you would love to adapt one of your books into a film?
I'm not really sure. I mean, because I don't really pay a lot of attention to directorial styles. I mean, I know Michael Bay likes explosions and sometimes creepy shots of actresses.
Yes,
like Transformers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, the camera's ogling her.
Yes, getting all up in there.
Yeah, so I mean, the Game of Thrones guys could probably do a good job with Battle for the Wasteland, as long as they don't get ahead of the source material and start making things up.
Mm-hmm.
Because while they had the books to go off, it was good. Then things started going off the rails toward the end, and then we had season 8.
Huge disappointment.
But then, if the Game of Thrones guys were making Battle for the Wastelands, they'd probably try to make it into porn.
Yes.
Spielberg, maybe, just because Spielberg generally does a good job with everything.
But didn't he make the maybe I'm saying it wrong. Didn't Spielberg direct the Gunslinger movie that was made, adaptation movie that was out?
The one with Idris Elba?
Yes.
Okay, I actually liked that movie, so I'm not going to be too hard on it, but let's see. Dark Tower film, 2017. The director is Nicolaj Arcel, who's Danish.
Okay, I don't know who that is.
And let's see, he did The Girl, the Dragon Tattoo.
That's a good film.
And a couple episodes that show Millennium, that X-Files. No, it's not the X-Files spin-off Millennium. It's another spin-off of The Girl, the Dragon Tattoo. So he mostly a lot of foreign films. And yeah, I think The Girl, the Dragon Tattoo is a foreign film as well.
Yeah, that's a great film too. It's a great film. But yeah, but the I don't know why I thought Steven Spielberg had something to do with that.
If Steven Spielberg was doing it, he'd probably have more money behind it. Because the Dark Tower movie's budget was $66 million. it made about 113 at the box office, which means basically in order to make money, you have to double or triple.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it made more money its first week than the Dark Tower made its whole run, which is unfortunate because the Dark Tower movie is pretty good. I mean, Matthew McConaughey chewing the scenery, and Idris Elba just kills everybody.
Yeah, I'm about to say you have Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey. Which Matthew McConaughey might be one of my favorite actors out there. How can you go wrong with that? Excuse me. Whew. All right, listen, Matthew. I'm going to shoot to the final question. What is your favorite horror remake? What's your favorite remake? Or reboot, remake?
Okay, I'm trying to think of some. Much as I complain about remakes, I have seen a number of them. I did see like the new Thing that explains what happened in the Norwegian camp.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, there's an American woman there, I guess, because making it all foreigners would hurt the box office.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was okay. Okay, now I'm going to have to look up horror movie remakes and see if anything sticks out. Let's see. Popular horror remake. The Mummy with Brendan Fraser. That was good.
The Mummy. The first two Mummies were definitely fun.
Yeah, I never saw the third one. I heard it was bad.
Yeah, it was horrible.
This Bram Stoker's Dracula was pretty but boring.
Yes.
Okay, top. Trying to think of some more.
Now I love the Friday the 13th reboot. That's my favorite Friday the 13th movie, which everybody loves.
The one where Jason has the bow. Hello?
Yeah. When he was actually like running and he was like hunting mode, like I like that. I like that Jason. I like that environment. I like the story.
Okay. And I think I never saw that one because I heard it was bad, but weren't they going for the idea that Jason was a survivor?
Yes, I mean he was abandoned in the woods, and like it, but also too, it gives you the backstory about Pamela Voorhees and where he's been hiding and why he's able to jump. Why he's able, if you're running ahead of him, how he's able to get ahead of you, and he's walking slow or whatever. He had his whole tunnel system built underground that he can get from one place to another. I mean, it was just an interesting concept, and it was a different view of the Jason Voorhees character. I really like.
Yeah, one of the Myopia episodes, I think we're talking about one of the earlier movies, saying that he was a sovereign citizen. You know, and he's declared that he is now the sovereign of Crystal Lake and doesn't want any horny teens trespassing.
And that's pretty much what this one's about. It wasn't that he was trying to kill people. It was that the fact was he felt like they were trespassing, and he saw, because of his mother was killed and how they treated him. He saw humans as being that were coming onto his land as dangerous predators, and he set up booby traps and everything all around his property so that no one wouldn't trespass. And guess what? So people trespass, and he kills them in some great ways.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I got this cough because of my allergies. But how can everyone find you, my friend?
Okay, well, just Matthew W. Quinn on Amazon. You'll see all my stuff there. I've got Thing in the Woods, the Atlanta Incursion. I want to have The Walking Worm out later this year, 2024. Battle for the Wastelands, prequel novella Son of Grendel, and the sequel for that, the sequel Serpent Sword. I have another novella called Little People, Big Guns. And then there's a short story collection called Flashing Steel, Flashing Fire. And I have a Substack, The World According to Quinn. You subscribe to that. 2 free emails per month, 1 premium email. Like I have premium subscribers. They get like stuff like how I would have done this particular movie, like The Last Starfighter. Or the next one is going to be Alien Resurrection. And then at one point I did the Roger Corman Alien ripoff Forbidden World. Yeah, my dad was reading my newsletter, and he's like, all these How I Would Have Done It movies I've never heard of. Except like, is the Phantom Menace. I did How I Would Have Done that too.
I've never seen any of the newer Star Wars films. I've never seen them, so I never.
The sequel trilogy.
But not even the sequel trilogy, but the newer stuff like Rogue One, this and that. I've seen the originals. I've never gotten into seeing the stuff that was done in the late '90s and forward.
The prequel trilogy was not as good. I mean, I saw Revenge of the Sith, and one word, no, because that's supposed to be the crowning tragedy of the whole series. Anakin causes what he feared, what he sold his soul to the Palpatine to stop, and just he's just screaming in the armor, no, and it's funny. It's supposed to be tragic.
And I heard that the prequels were horrible. I heard the prequels were bad.
Well, they're disappointing. The sequel trilogy, The Force Awakens is too much like the original Star Wars. The Last Jedi, they decided to be different, and did some real interesting stuff. And the third one, they try and Frankenstein two different directors' visions together, and it caps with somehow Palpatine returned.
Wow.
So I mean, the lack of lack of creativity in the sequel trilogy. What they should have done is taken the books from the 90s and early 2000s, and the stuff that took place 20 or 30 years later after the original movie, and use that, because instead of more evil space wizards, the galaxy is invaded by aliens from another galaxy that want to exterminate all Force users and run purely on biotech, the Yazan Vong. That is, would be different.
It would be.
And Luke, Leia, and Han would be in their 40s and 50s at this point, so everyone's the right age. It's sort of, all their kids now.
Mm-hmm. See, I'm going to have to sit down and just binge watch the Star Wars films, even the prequel ones.
Rogue One was good, though.
I hear like the newer ones are really good, and like I have to just do it, sit down and binge watch them.
And the Disney Channel shows I've heard, I heard Andor was good. My brother-in-law really loves Mandalorian.
I heard Mandalorian is amazing.
And the Ahsoka show, the Jedi who is Anakin Skywalker's apprentice, who is never mentioned in the prequel trilogy or the original trilogy. She's trying to rebuild the Jedi Order herself after the fall of the Empire. Like, she meets Luke at one point. And there's a fallen Jedi and his, this young woman who he's sort of training as his evil Padawan, dark Jedi apprentice, and various misadventures they have. Ooh. That's pretty good. It has the actor who played Titus Pullo in Rome as the bad Jedi.
Nice. All right, so listen, I'm gonna when I have a week or two off, I'm definitely gonna binge watch the newer ones. Everybody keeps telling me to stay away from the prequels, so I might stay away from them. I'm not. Who knows? I might even watch them. Fuck it, and just experience it. All right.
In the second prequel, you get to see Yoda fighting with a lightsaber.
Now, I've seen the previews of that, which is super cool, because I love my man Yoda. So, I would love to see that. But I'm going to definitely give those a try. And listen, everybody, get over to Amazon and type in Matthew Quinn and check out The Things That Live in the Woods, as well as The Atlanta Excursion. And also check out Wastelands as well. I mean, he has a lot of good books out there. Check them out. Matthew, it's been a blast having you on, man. Listen, I'm going to have you back on towards the end of the year, and we're going to talk about your new book, the third book that's coming out.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure, man. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and that's Matthew Quinn. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Mm-hmm.